posing for the drum, but we're gonna see if we can capture everything.
On the hip hop setting. The hip hop setting.
Marcy, can I just see the small questions?
Oh my God.
Mike? Oh, Mike. The white one.
So I think
Here.
The white one.
Number 5. 눈이 부었네. 그러니까 여기 눈이 부었어. You know, there was a series in 1980s that was so popular. It's The Beauty and the Beast. Let me show you. 근데 약간 닮았어. 봐봐. 봐봐. 맞지? You say you don't want to see it. You don't want to see it. 닮았지? 그치? It's from 19. It's in the 80s. 되게 닮았어. Yeah, look at the beauty. See, I think I remember watching this on Saturday. I don't know, in Brazil. Eunice says 9:15, right? Where is she? Hold me closer, take me deeper. 못 참겠어 진짜. Yeah, so we're gonna start once Eunice comes, okay? 그때까지 셋업하고 하면 될 것 같아. Oh, so did you switch with Jane? Oh, okay. So next week is Good Friday, okay? Oh, let me ask you this. How early can you guys come next Friday? Huh? Oh, okay.
Anytime.
7. So I guess I just have to ask Eunice. Okay. 7 o'clock. Okay. I think I might aim for 7:30. Yeah. Good Friday. So we're gonna do 7 last words because of the youth group. You know, a lot of members that come on Friday they never had this before. So we're gonna have 7 last words service. I'm gonna have the youth group to lead praise. Not a lot. Lead praise. Man of sorrow, and then I'm gonna do call to worship, and then after 4th word above all, and then after everything tethered and because of Jesus. Okay, I'm gonna have you guys to read out of the 7 last words. Okay, I'm trying to stick to non-YG praise members and youth group teachers to the whole thing. Okay, so you, Jason, Luna, Jane. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. I think like the last 7 words service. It's not that long. It's an hour max. So after that, I think we could practice and prep for homecoming. Prep with the food prepping and also music. Yeah, I think we could do that. Yeah. Okay. I put Francis for your VIP on your behalf. Yeah. But yeah. So that's that. Can you call Eunice? And she walks in right there. See? Wow. Okay. Eunice, Andre's here. 진짜. Well, Andre, that's how excited you're gonna get from her anyway. Okay, I'm gonna pray, and Marcy's gonna lead us today. All right, God, thank you for this time, Lord. Thank you for keeping us safe, Lord, so we could be in your house as we spend our time together. Give us wisdom through Marcy's presentation, Lord. Restore us as we pray together. Pray all this in Jesus' name.
Hello. Not gonna lie, I downed a whole Celsius before this, so I might be a little off the walls. Anyways, hello. Is this too loud? It's okay. Okay. So. Chapter 3, part 2, just a review from last time. We ended off on differences can promote growth. So the rest of the chapter is going to be about, the rest of the chapter is going to be about differences and how we navigate those in a relationship. So, yeah. So, firstly, kind of just like going into how to integrate faith into your real life and your relationships. The author is talking about how religious people know the truth, and know the word of God, but spiritual people actually do it. And God meant for our spiritual life to drive and direct all aspects of our lives, relational, financial, sexual, work, and everything else that comprises and makes up our lives. But the problem when we start, the two like basic issues that kind of like come about when we start dating are difficulties in bringing up faith matters and difficulties in living the life that we um, believe to live. So unfortunately, we might not know much about a person's faith as we like start to date them off the bat. And as we evaluate whether or not we want to pursue dating them, we have to be able to discern about their character and how they operate in the world. But their character maturity is not necessarily always derived from Christian belief, and there are a lot of caring and responsible people in the world who aren't necessarily believers, so it's important to address those issues of faith and matters of faith pretty soon. Some of the problems that arise when we bring up spiritual issues are like feeling awkward and unnatural, not wanting to turn your day off to God, being anxious that you might lose the relationship, being concerned that since you yourself aren't perfect, you'll be seen as hypocritical, not knowing how to discuss spiritual issues because they feel so private. And these are all important issues, but it's important and helpful to remember that the underlying reality of dating is that you're ultimately trying to find and also be a good marriage partner. So you want that person to know and share your relationship with God because that's ultimately the most important part of who you are, and hopefully of who they are. And then there's also difficulties in living the life. So that other area of conflict is like when the person doesn't like walk the talk, or walk the talk. Like that makes, yeah. So that's basically when they exhibit like a chronic pattern of weakness or struggle that doesn't seem to be resolved over time. So whatever it is, their spiritual life, the bottom line is that their spiritual life and faith has not ultimately transformed their character as it should. So that creates this like split existence, this concept of a split existence, which is the inability to integrate your needs in life into God's ways of meeting your needs. So he gives the example of sexual acting out as a shortcut to intimacy, or someone having a bad temper could be due to a fear of being honest and righteous. So that was like a interesting way to look at someone having a bad temper. It's because they are actually afraid of being honest and righteous in a relationship. And then also on and off relationships where you break up and make up a lot could be a symptom of an inability to emotionally leave your home and be an independent adult. So yes, those are the difficulties that come about, but at the end of the day, we're not demanding perfection in each other, but just requiring righteousness. As a righteous person stays connected to God, and when they slip and fall, they will repent, take correction, and reconnect to God. Yes. Then he talks about how in a relationship we ought to play an active role in each other's growth. And we basically need, as the relationship deepens, we become more committed to each other. There's a requirement to be a part of each other's growth and conduct or behavior, even if you don't end up getting married. And so the 4 key things, points that he brings up to watch out for and how to actively do this is input and feedback is the first one. So as your relationship grows, your awareness of each other's struggles and needs should also grow. And because the person that you're dating is in a position where they see things or know more things about you that others don't, in the more committed stages of your relationship, you need to give each other permission to confront, give input, and encourage each other on a spiritual level. And then he also talks about giving it time, how generally speaking, it is a good idea to let time pass and experiences pass before you confront something. Be quick to listen and slow to speak from James was the point in the Bible verse that he pointed to. And how, it's better to kind of let time pass for enough grace to build between you and your partner so that when you do bring it up, you won't be seen as condemning them or judging them. And for us to remember that we all need grace before we hear truth. And then the other point is to not be a parent. So basically avoiding the tendency to take the role of spiritual responsibility for your partner and basically not setting up the relationship in a way that is so that the other person is performing or growing under your wing. Because, when a parent's main purpose is to raise their child and then the child has to leave their parents. So if that's kind of what you're creating if you're being a parent to your partner. Eventually, they will leave the nest, which was, yeah. And then the last one is being comforting and challenging. It's important to do both. Some some relationships are stronger on comfort than others, but a good relationship involves not only feedback, but enough stability and permission to comfort each other's hurts and also challenge each other when we fail. Yes. Am I going too fast? No? Good talking speed? Okay. Then there's the aspect of spiritual compatibility, which is a major part of dating. So he talks about the design, how God has designed us for intimacy with himself and with others. And we, if that part of us is connected and working properly, we'll naturally seek out healthy spirituality in others. So we'll be drawn to others who share our own spiritual life. But if something is mismatched or broken, we'll tend to feel drawn to unhealthy or absent partners or spiritually absent partners. So ultimately, spiritual compatibility is a diagnostic issue of our own spiritual health. It's more reflective of our spiritual life than anything. And he also talks about the spiritual development path, which means that, this was a little diluted at first, but you are not who you were, nor are you who you will be. So kind of always know, you're always capable of change. And you're not, just because you did something in the past doesn't mean you are that person now, patterns and cycles can change. But obviously not by your own efforts, but with God. And with perseverance in that process, we ultimately become mature and complete. And as we mature, our attitudes, our values, and habits start to change. And sometimes we date people during those periods of change. And obviously, it's unrealistic to expect that we're always going to be full grown as we date. But everyone is going to continue to change. But if anything, you should be more concerned if your partner has never necessarily experienced a period of spiritual questioning. And that questioning and that wrestling is how people actually own their faith instead of piggybacking on the faith of other people or their parents or community or whoever they learned it from. So basically, don't get too committed or serious if your partner is still kind of questioning the meaning of their faith or their Christianity. And in a time of spiritual questioning, you can be supportive and helpful to them and give them room to grow, but you should not make any major commitments to them. And then just areas of belief and practice. Obviously, there are going to be some disagreements that you can live with and some that you can't. And some of them will be more based on your preference. And some are going to be pretty objective. But yeah, the Bible is very clear. The gospel is very clear. So you need to know that for yourself and wrestle through that yourself, and also discuss that with the person that you're dating as you become closer. Talks about differences in spiritual level. And so some of the differences that he talks about are Christian and non-Christian, which is something that comes up a lot. And basically he kind of just said that Christians should not be in serious dating relationships with non-Christians. Although we are to be involved in the real world as being the salt and light of the earth, we still need to, where our hearts lie, that needs to be found in someone who has the same faith, is essentially what he's saying. And it is also possible to have non-Christian friends of the opposite sex. It's not like it's impossible, and we ought to show those people that we can treat them in respectful, brotherly, sisterly ways, but it's best to reserve our romantic interest for people who share our faith. Yes. Then he also makes the distinction between committed and uncommitted. So basically, how do you know the person that you're dating is uncommitted? So first, you have to make sure about what exactly it is that you're looking at and what exactly it is that you're perceiving, because sometimes our own judgment will, or perfectionism or standards can make the person's differences seem bad or immature. And even though the person might not be on the same track, you can't just assume that. For example, just because they don't know the Bible as well as you do doesn't mean that they don't love God as much as you. And sometimes people seem less committed because they go through loss, they go through struggle and suffering, so we ought to help them resolve that. While also, again, in the previous point, not making serious or major commitments when you're in that stage of helping them or supporting them. You're not, just kind of putting your own feelings at a halt for a moment in order to help that person overcome whatever it is that they're struggling with. And again, it's just one of those questions and one of those things that is better seen through the lens of how am I doing spiritually? How am I spiritually healthy? And if things are working and going well within yourself, then you'll start to sense when in your relationship there is a sort of spiritual emptiness, and you'll be able to resolve that and make a decision based on that. And then he talks about mature and new, so basically a mature Christian with a newer Christian. And if you are a more mature believer, it is good to wait until the new Christian's faith has solidified before making deeper commitments. So it kind of helps you stay out of that being a parent, and you're allowing the person that you're pursuing to take more ownership over their own spiritual growth and faith. And yeah, it's basically better to date someone who is about the same maturity level as you are, and that can prevent a lot of codependency, control issues, and spiritual growth, stagnancy. Yes. I think that's it for, no, not it, I'm sorry. And so basically, the spiritual compatibility aspect of dating means that we ought to set limits on our desires and impulses. So that could manifest in wanting the person, the Celsius, wanting the person to be compatible spiritually, even if they are not, or trying to change the other person, or denying the conflicts in the relationship, while also while you're too busy judging your own partner, like you're missing out on your own weaknesses, and also just being afraid to address spiritual issues within ourselves. But as we continue to grow in Christ and in His ways, it'll become easier to love and invest our hearts wisely and not make serious commitments without thinking it through and needing to right away. But that is kind of like the end of chapter 3. And then chapter 4, this is like a pretty short one. Any questions on chapter 3? Yes. Yeah. Or you have to set limits on wanting to do these things. It was kind of like a conclusive part of the chapter, but basically if this is very simple, but if your partner is always or you think that they're not praying as hard or as much as you, whatever that means to you, and kind of putting that insecurity of yours on your partner because you might think that you're not doing it enough or it's up to your standards. So kind of just like a double, what is that word? Double standard on your partner, on your relationship. I don't know. That's kind of how I understood it. Okay. Anything else? Okay. This chapter is quite short. It's just kind of talking about how we get into relationships when we tend to be lonely. So basically, yeah. Okay. So he basically kind of gives he loves giving questions, self-reflection questions of when am I doing this? When am I doing that? Why are you taking a picture? Oh, I'm sorry. I'll make it bigger next time. Why are you taking a picture? Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'll make it next time. Yeah, so these are just this is a series of things that we tend to do when we are compromising our boundaries. Did I spell that right? Yes, I did. So if you're doing any of the following, then you might be giving up boundaries out of a fear of being alone. So putting up with disrespectful behavior, basically sacrificing your values to be in this relationship, staying in a relationship that you know is dead, settling for less, all these things that we all talk about and I've heard of. Also smothering the person that you're dating with overbearingness and needs, you never do this for me, but it's just kind of a way for you to control your partner or manipulate your partner. Yes, and he also talks about how if you have to be dating or married in order to feel happy, then you're probably a dependent person and you'll never be happy with whatever person you find in the long run. So that dependency will keep you from being selective enough, picky enough, quote unquote, to find the kind of person who will actually be good for you. And it'll keep you from being able to fully realize a relationship with a healthy person. So if you're afraid of being alone or abandonment, you cannot use the love of people who are truly there until you can deal with your own fears and your own insecurities. Then, I know it's a lot of words. And then in order for that aloneness or that loneliness to be cured, the boundary that he sets is, in order to cure your fear of being alone, you need to put a boundary around your wish for a relationship. So when you have to cure that fear first and then find a relationship. And so how do you cure that? He says first to strengthen your relationship with God, making him your first priority, so that you're not trying to get the needs that God fulfills met by another person or another human being. And then strengthening your relationships with safe, healthy Christians, and by making sure that you're not getting, your people needs met by a dating relationship. So you need God, but you also need people. And dating is meant for mature, intact adults. And so mature adults will have that support system that allows their needs to be met in all senses in all aspects. And so that support system comes from when you have that support system from God and with close people, that grounds you so that you can make choices and decisions out of strength, not of weakness or codependency. And if you have your needs met outside of dating, then whoever you choose or whatever relationship you choose to be in, you're choosing out of a place of strength. And he also mentions being vulnerable within your support system. And just because you have a lot of friends, that doesn't mean that those friendships are meeting your deepest needs. So being vulnerable about, having needs, expressing your pain, your hurts, what you like, what you love, what you don't like. And so, but at the same time, that support system is only going to do as much good as, you allow it to. So as much as you express, that's the extent as to up to what that support system is going to be able to offer you and do for you. And then also pursuing wholeness. And in addition to, being vulnerable and having a life of spiritual growth, personal growth, and all these things, working on your soul, the soul issues. So, that's kind of like going back and going through your childhood hurts, your recurring themes and patterns in your relationships, family, friends, your work life, other areas of brokenness, pain, and dysfunction. And that is also a way for us to cure that loneliness that we feel a lot. Yes. So, as we grow spiritually, our fear of aloneness that we can tie to a certain issue in our childhood, or, I see that I'm constantly pushing people away when I'm really upset, rather than being able to process and go back and talk to them, ghosting. I find I'm a chronic ghoster. Those kinds of patterns and cycles that we tend to ignore because no one is actively calling them out. Our last slide, yay. So the best boundary against getting into a relationship out of loneliness or getting into a bad relationship is basically you not needing that relationship, you feeling happy and fulfilled in your life outside of a marriage or dating, you being fulfilled in God and the people around you, grounded in a support system, working out your issues, having a full life with hobbies and, service and growing, intellectual growth. All of those things are, basically allowing you to make relationship decisions out of a place of strength, not a place of weakness. And, dating was never meant to cure your loneliness. That loneliness can only be cured by God and the relationships that God gives you with other people. But at the same time, those relationships won't necessarily help if you don't actively pursue vulnerability within those relationships. So, yes. I think that's it. I think that's what I got. Like, you don't need this person to be fulfilled. Yeah.
So that's the best part of it.
Yeah.
I feel like this is more tighter than marriage.
Any questions? Scenarios, hypotheticals you'd like to go through? No?
But becoming the challenge is like, you know what, I'm just not gonna do it.
Yes. Like, it kind of talks about dating in a sense of like, even if you don't get married. So like, because even in the beginning, they were like, they like verbatim were like, you probably won't marry the first person you date. That was the kind of tone that I read. So I think this is just kind of like how to have like a healthy way of dating, and like, it doesn't talk about breaking up yet. I don't know, but you know, like how to break up respectfully in a healthy way. Like, it doesn't talk about that, but it does. Yeah, it does. It does say that there are. Hello. It does say that. Uh, is that a crossbow? Oh, okay. Sorry, I got distracted. Sorry. Yes.
3 slides before? 2? No, after this. Yes, okay. So, but as much as that sounds obvious, or I don't know. Um, as much as it sounds obvious, resolving past childhood hurts recurring theme that are the same. You see, when I saw the interview of Carl Lanster, Hillsong pastor, right? That was his problem. You know what I mean? He was a pastor of thousands of people, and he represented like millions of Christian ears at the time. You know, he was a pastor of Justin Bieber, right? And he like a celebrity pastor figure. But that was his problem. He didn't resolve his childhood hurts, and that's what he's been saying like over and over after the whole like exposed to his infidelity and all that. Which, like once again, it's not that difficult. It's not like that complex, you know. Right? Why do you think that this is gonna go away intermarriage? Because it's not. Right? So resolving past childhood, that's when I see cases like that, because it's because of him, the whole stuff breaks. You know what I mean? Like one past wound that did not resolve, and for him it was narcissism, right? And you know what he said? This is I forget what the interview was correct, but this is what he said. You know what the problem is? When you're 30 and you're successful, nobody's gonna tell you. Nobody's gonna correct you. Nobody's gonna tell you like what's wrong with you, the older you become, and especially pastors. Because you're a pastor, and so like as much as that if a pastor could fail like that, then let alone I think that's more than half of the problem that I see in this church too. Resolving past childhood hurts. Relationship is not the end goal of life. It's not a salvation. Yeah, I think you could go to I mean, take questions.
Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. Yes.
Going back to dating, asking somebody.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I also was like, what is that wording? But I think he was talking about like allow yourself to not be hyper independent. I think that's what I was thinking. Not isolating yourself when you need help or when you actually need something from your partner, because we all have needs. Um, so being able to express that and not and like allowing your partner to fulfill them, not kind of like like no, like it's too much, or oh no, they can't do it, or oh like kind of like trying to like reckon with yourself and figure it out for yourself, like not doing that, because that's like a form of like being hyper independent, and like what's the point of
I think number one, you see, because we look at slides, we think it's two definite statements, but they're not. Because relationship is like,
yeah
it's ongoing. And then when I thought of when I saw the last slide where it says like when you don't need that person, I thought about parent-child too. When the child does not need me, that's the best relationship. Yeah, but that does not mean like you don't talk or yeah. So yeah. So that's why were you asking? Oh, because you okay. So there is a book called Boundaries that was published in late 90s, and there was a million sellers. It's not gonna be popular because we're talking about nowadays, so it doesn't like really. So the Boundaries was such a big like book publishing. So they the publisher they made segments of it. Boundaries in dating, boundaries in what?
work. There's one
Boundaries in work, boundaries in right. So that's how. Yeah. So it's the book of boundaries that was the big. It is. Well, I mean, well, I don't know how. It is co-author.
Yeah,
Yeah. So,
he just has a friend.
but I realize, as I'm studying so hard, like this cannot be presented because of the whole. But no. And so that's yeah. So that's the book. Okay. Questions?
I do. So my thought is not really a question. I hope you hear me out. Like I think that's really a good point. Like there's a bunch of points, so maybe I'm just trying to understand it to one point, but like they were saying like the author was saying like, oh you can't, or no, it's not really like recommended. It's like they're not really a believer, or to like give time until that like the new baby Christian is like matured. But I'm trying to think like in a relationship, like there's gonna be seasons where I don't know if this is the right word, but like I don't know if like there are gonna be seasons where like my partner is, I don't want to say more faithful, but like you know what I mean? Like there's gonna be seasons where like I might be struggling, but my partner might not. My partner might be struggling, I might not. But then they're telling me not to be like a parent. But then we should also like be vulnerable, kind of like what Edwin was saying. Like I think so. It's not really a question, but like, do you understand like the confusion that I have? Because it's like, yeah.
I think it's similar
answer is like